Hello, I'm Brian James, and welcome to Breakthroughs in Natural Healing. My guest today is Fred Neal, developer of liquid manna, a remarkable supersaturated water molecule saturated with oxygen. The liquid is having amazing healing results around the world, and we'll hear from Fred talking about some of those remarkable achievements, and also how he came to come up with liquid manna. Fred, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Brian. What we have here is a technology really that helps the body to heal itself. So we don't claim healing, but we have the technology that will enhance the water, and the water and the technology does the healing.
Fred, it's an interesting story about how you got into this, because as I understand it, you were unwell and very unwell, and was just experimenting with some technology and struck on something. Can you just tell us an insight into that story?
Well, yes, I was, Brian. I was had been working. My background is engineering, and I had been working on some technology and working a little bit with oxygen and how I might use it to enhance my body, and just kind of skirting the issue, not really deeply involved in it as we are now, but I was also developing a technology that would help detect the IEDs. That's the improvised explosive devices that were killing our troops in Iraq. And I was interested in developing a technology for that, but then I became ill with what the doctors later described was polymyalgia. And from my understanding, it was an inflammation of the blood vessels, and I was in total pain, and it would take me 2 hours to get out of bed and that sort of thing, so you can imagine how that might play out. But during this time, I came to understand that oxygen is the healing fluid for all situations, and I was had inspiration as to how to utilize the technology that I had been working on, that I previously described, and tie that in with oxygen and ultimately water. And through that process, and even whenever I was in much pain, I was still trying to move forward with that technology, but we discovered how to enhance the oxygen molecule, to stabilize the water, to do some other very interesting things, and consequently raise the oxygen level in water to an extremely high level. And once I started doing that very seriously, well, within 30 days I had no more pain, and I haven't been sick since. So this thing was born out of a dire need for me to come off of my deathbed, which I did. And then the consequence of all of this was not only did I get revived and regain my health, but other folks that were working with me, helping me during those days of pain and sicknesses that I had, they saw what happened to me and said, well, if it worked for you, well, we would like to get on the water also. So they did, and we started seeing all kinds of things happening, not realizing that what we were doing was going to reach into those areas of people's lives, but they really did, and lots of good testimonies started coming out of it from that standpoint, Brian.
Fred, and back then when it had that positive effect on you, and people said, I wonder whether it will help with this condition. You really had no idea whether it was going to help or not with that particular condition, did you?
No, I didn't. I just knew that I was being helped, and my whole motive was to get well myself, to where my wife didn't have to have a funeral, and I had no idea where we were headed with this thing at all, and so we started to go ahead and develop it. We had water. The people that were very close to me were drinking the water, and a good friend of mine there said his mother had come down with the fastest growing breast cancer. This was our first really insight after my healing was manifest. He said the doctors told his mother that she had the fastest growing breast cancer, and he said, do you think this water would help her? I said, I don't have a clue. I said, it looks to me like we have everything to gain and nothing to lose, so why not? So he took her some water. 16 days later, she goes back to the doctor, and they find no cancer in her. And I said, what do we have on our hands here? And I was as surprised as anybody else.
Well, Fred, we better discover how it works, why oxygenating the water at, and I think you mentioned, millions and millions of levels of oxygen in the water, and what it does to the cells of the body to enable the healing.
Well, what we learned to do was basically supersaturate the oxygen molecule to a very high level, and they say that that's impossible to do, but they also say that aerodynamically bumblebees can't fly. So
yes.
we just did that, and we came to the understanding, like I say, that oxygen is a healing fluid for all situations. So in my mind is if I could immerse myself in oxygen, so to speak, well then I should be seeing healing for myself, and that's basically what I did. Now, oxygen on the equipment that I use, and I only it depends on which piece of equipment you're using. You may get different numbers, but the equipment that I'm using is an off-the-shelf piece of equipment that I built some additional equipment to go along with that, and we started raising the level of oxygen through this technology. But to give you a reference as to where I'm coming from, the average, let's say, the average man on the street has an oxygen level, and that's what I'm going to be talking about is oxygen levels rather than say parts per million, because I'm working with energy levels in the technology that I'm using. So the average man on the street would have an oxygen level, let's say, of around 900 or 1,000. Now this is on my technology. Mm-hmm. A typical good drinking water would have an oxygen level on my scale of between 14 and 1,600. Well, we found out how to raise the oxygen level, and raised it to around 1 million, not really knowing what the body would be able to handle, because I am not well versed in the medical profession at all, and I've never studied that aspect of it. But when we got it up to about 1 million on my scale, then we had some water bottled, and the vice president of the water company said, well, if this does what you think it will do, I want to get on this water too, which he did. He said he had a high blood pressure and a high cholesterol problem for 9 years. Well, he was on the water, and 60 days later he goes back to his physician, and for the first time in 9 years, all of his readings were normal. Well, we didn't understand that at all, but he understood it, and it was a real relief to him. Well, not knowing what the body would be able to handle, we started working. I started working on my farm ponds. I don't know what you call them where you live, but they're just small bodies of water that we have for animals and things like this on our place there.
Yeah, ponds, dams.
Yes.
Yep.
And so I started raising the level of oxygen in the pond. I wanted to see what it would do, and I also had a total dissolved solid meter, a little electronic meter that I'd bought off of the market, and also a pH meter that I'd bought off the market. These are commercially available. And so whenever I would raise the oxygen level in the pond, then I noticed, I read the total dissolved solids, I read the pH, and then after from time to time I would check that, and I was noticing that the total dissolved solids were going down in number, and the pH was going up. Well, I equated that to the total dissolved solids kind of like poisons in my body. And as we displaced the poisons, then it made my body and it made the pond go more toward an alkaline state. Then I recall reading that Dr. Warburg, I believe it was in the 30s and 40s, won the Nobel Prize twice by discovering that no disease could live in an oxygen-rich environment. And so then my goal was to raise my ponds and raise my body to an oxygen-rich environment. And in the body, we use what is called a pH scale and use test strips, litmus paper, hydrazine paper. Different people call it different things, but the scale runs from 0 to 14, and 7 being the center point of the scale. Anything below 7 is acid. Anything above 7 is alkaline. Now then, if your body is in an acid state, then diseases, based on Dr. Warburg's finding, could easily live. If you moved it into the alkaline state above 7, and then I learned by studying that preferably you'd like to see the pH of the body in the 7.4 to 8.0 range, somewhere in that area, and then you would have less problems with diseases because they couldn't live in that oxygen-rich environment. So that was the platform that I moved from. But also, and I'll finish this up about the ponds, 2.5 years later, I had raised these ponds to over 200 million oxygen units on the same scale that we're talking about previously. And after 2.5 years, the pond still held that high oxygen level. So we found out that regardless, as long as the water was wet after our treatment, if you will, our involvement in it, our modification, our contribution, as long as the water is wet, it holds that high oxygen level. And nobody has ever done that, to my knowledge, anywhere in the world before. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we started working with, Brian.
Okay. And Fred, you have the oxygenated water, liquid manna, in two different forms. One that you can take, ingest into your body, you dilute it, of course, and the other, you don't have to. You can just put the bottle in a bath, for instance, and it still will oxygenate that water without the contents of the bottle going into the bath. Can you just clarify that?
Yes, that's an interesting little phenomenon that we discovered, because what we're doing is putting a tremendous amount of energy in that bottle. and that bottle is an oxygen generator, for sake of a better word, I guess. But we really, the two different waters, I guess we would refer to one of them as our liquid manna, and then we're going to be referring to the other one as the royal liquid manna. And the royal liquid manna is a very interesting water. That came about over a period of about 2 years on experimentation that I was running at the time I was doing the liquid manna. It was basically designed for burn victims. It has all of this water has instantaneous tissue healing qualities to it. I'm talking instantaneous tissue healing qualities, and whenever I say tissue healing, without digressing too much from the point, I've had 3 hernia operations. I'm 78 years old. I've had 2 low and 1 umbilical hernia operation. Now, some of these date back 20 years. All of those scars have left my body. There's no more scar showing in those operations.
That's externally?
That's externally.
But it would also heal scars internally, I suppose?
Yes, it will. And
okay.
And we've had several testimonies where people have had internal bleeding and drink the liquid manna, and within 24 hours the bleeding stopped. Their energy level come way up, and it's just been a phenomenal thing. But the two waters, I'll address the liquid manna. It was one that we had taken the level from 1 million to 2 million, and we got to 5 million. And a friend was in Dallas, Texas, was reworking the swimming pool and putting the Dallas city water back in there with all the chlorine and stuff like that in it that they have in that water system. And he asked me, could I design a water that would remove the chlorine from his pool? And I said, I don't know. I don't suppose it's ever been done, but let's give it a try. So I designed him some water and sent it down to him and told him how to apply it to the pool. He did, and it took a little bit over 3 weeks, and we were running tests on this on a weekly basis, and he was doing tests there too for chlorine content and all. A little over 3 weeks, there was no chlorine to be found in the pool. So what happened? The oxygen is so high that it attacks the pathogens and the poisons and all in that pool, just like it did in my pond, and you come out with some very, very interesting water. And another thing that he saw, but I've not been able to capture it on film yet, is that once that pool or that body of water gets up to that high level, it takes on a velvet texture on the surface if the wind is not blowing or anything. And he saw that. I did not see that. He took pictures of it, but it didn't come out. So that's another thing that we're looking for. But on the other side of the coin, we have the royal that we mentioned, and if someone is trying to detox their body, then they can just run their tub full of water and just put the unopened bottle into the water and let it float like a cork. And after about 5 or 10 minutes, it'll charge the water in the tub. And by laying in the water in the tub, we say if you drink the water on the inside and soak in the water on the outside, it opens up the pores of your skin, and you get rid of a lot of toxins from the body, and in a very very short order. But the beauty part about it is, then you can take that bottle out. It does not lose its charge. It's good. It's good to go for whatever you want to do then. And then people have found out that if they have a headache, we've had a couple of people with migraine headaches that have reported to us that They just hold the unopened bottle next to the pain, and the pain goes away. I had recently a call from a lady in Vancouver, Washington, British Columbia, that had just received a box of our product and said her husband had a knee operation about 5 months ago, and he'd been in total pain ever since, and they could not stop it or anything. So she said, and she was in tears, she said, "We haven't started drinking the water yet, but my husband knew it was coming. When he got it, he took it out of the box, held it next to his knee, and within 5 minutes," she said, "the pain was gone for the first time in those 5 months." And that's the kind of response and things that we're getting from the royal version of it. Sometimes we suggest that if someone has a health problem, maybe that they're trying to overcome, drink one of the royal bottles the first day, sit down and sip it real slow, about a third of it over about a 15 or 30 minute time frame, and then stand up. And if you're steady on your feet, then go ahead and consume the rest of the bottle the first day. Then go ahead and continue on the red green, not the regular liquid manna, and it is mixed 1 tablespoon per gallon of your non-chlorinated drinking water, and that is a good strategy to use. And someone discovered that, and so we just pass that on to other people, and think it's and see that it's really been beneficial to a lot of folks by using it that way.
Okay, so it depends, I suppose. How will people be directed as to whether they should drink the water or whether they should have a bath with the capped bottle in the water?
Well, we suggest everybody have the bath if they have the bath facilities in their house. A lot of people only have the showers, but we suggest that they do that. Now, generally, when people call me and they start telling me that they're having health problems of various and sundry sorts, then I immediately say, then you need to probably, I would suggest that you drink one of the bottles. And if they tell me that we just want to maintain our health, a maintenance program, well, then we don't suggest that they drink that bottle. Just go ahead and get on a red green, and it's got a very high level of oxygen. It will get rid of the poisons, the toxins, the pathogens. As you drink it over a period of time, it will clean up the piping and the plumbing in the body, if you will. And for a maintenance program, we don't necessarily recommend drinking the bottle, but if they've got a major health problem they're trying to overcome, we suggest that they go ahead and do that.
Okay. My guest on Breakthroughs in Natural Healing is Fred Neal, who's the developer of liquid manna. Just to backtrack, Fred, when illness is in the body or disease, it is in an acid condition which is probably 7 or below in the pH scale. With the oxygenated water, the liquid manna, which is super saturated, it raises the pH level and the body becomes more alkaline, and the poisons and disease are knocked out by the oxygenated water or this energy in the water. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, I think it is, Brian. What I have found out in my experimentation and all is that as poisons come into the body, and we get poison from everywhere. We get it out of the air. We get it from the food we insecticides, pesticides, just any number of things. As poisons come into the body, poisons displace oxygen in the body. Well, conversely then, if you flood the body with oxygen, I believe, then you will displace the poisons, and by displacing the poisons, then you assist the pH. The water will assist the pH in going toward the alkaline side, and we've seen that over through many people. I had one gentleman went to his doctor, and the doctor tested his pH, and it was 6. Now this guy's in relatively good health. He goes back. He's on the liquid manna, just our regular liquid manna, not the royal. After 2 months of being on the water, he goes back to the doctor for another checkup for whatever reason it was, and his pH had risen from 6 to 7. So that just tells me that by drinking the water, he displaced the poisons that was in the body, and consequently, once the poisons are displaced, then automatically your body is going to go toward the oxygen-rich side.
Fred, you've got numerous testimonials from all over the United States. Can you just tell us about some of the more remarkable healings that you've encountered through the liquid manna?
I would be delighted to, and what I want to do is to describe one for myself, and then one for my wife. Now, my wife is 81 years old. I'm 78. We've been married for 57 years. And we, after we had developed this water, about 3.5 years ago, we started using the water as eye drops, because we knew that we just knew that our eyes needed healing, because what had happened to her 22 years ago, she had a glaucoma situation that caused her to pass out in Dallas, Texas one time, and we got her to the eye doctor and also Presbyterian Hospital there in Dallas, and I believe it was an Australian doctor by the name of Maltino had invented over several years ago, I don't really know when, the Maltino implant, and so they put a double-plated Maltino implant into her eyes, which equalizes the pressure from the inside to the outside. It was the buildup of pressure that caused her to pass out, and the damage that was in her eye would not allow that pressure to release itself. Well, anyway, the double-plate Maltino implant, that was a success. However, she lost the use of that eye. That eye went totally blind for 22 years. Well, about 3.5 years ago, we both started putting water in our eyes. We've just used the liquid manna as we drink it. Put it, just use eyedroppers and just put it in the corner of our eyes. Well, my eye doctor had told me whenever I had my glasses checked, he said, you have cataracts forming in your eyes, said you're going to have to deal with those sooner or later. Well, this went on for quite some time, and then whenever I went back 2 or 3 years later to get my glasses changed, there was no sign of cataracts in my eyes at all, and he said there were black specks forming in your eyes, and he said those are gone also. So this water in my eyes totally eliminated the cataracts from my eyes. That is a personal one-on-one testimony of what this done for my particular eyes. Well, my wife kept doing the same thing, and just about a year ago, now her eye had there was a white film had formed over her left eye, just like you see on blind people
yes,
all the time. That's just common. Well, about a year ago, that white film receded off her eye, and her beautiful blue eye returned in its color about a year or so ago. And I asked her, do you see anything out of that eye? And she said, I only see just a little sliver of light, and that's all. Everything else was total darkness.
Mm.
Well, one month ago, we were in northern Arkansas, and it was a beautiful night. The moon was out. Saturn, I think, was the constellation or whatever that was nearest the moon that night. We were admiring that, and she closed her good eye, and she could see the moon in its entirety with her left eye for the first time in 22 years. And we have record of when all of that took place in Dallas. We know exactly when it was and what has happened all that time. The doctor said, we know that you cannot see out because we cannot see in. That was verified. So they just gave up on her, but the water then, with its tissue healing qualities to it, had corrected that eye. And just a couple of weeks ago, we were on our way to church, and she looked in. We have a car with a sun visor that has a makeup mirror and a lighted makeup mirror, and she pulled that down and looked at it, and for the first time she could see both of her eyes. And now she's seeing people. She does not recognize the features yet, but she can see people. And now she also has with two eyes, depth perception is returning to her. So this has been a phenomenal testimony right here in our own house. And if this water never done anything for anybody else but her, it has been well worth it, Brian.
Well, that's an extraordinary story, Fred, but personal story as you've related. And there are many, many others that come across your table or in telephone conversations as well. So we've heard about your wife's cataract healing. Maybe just one or two others that would be interesting to the listener. Well,
we had, along with the eye situation, we had a lady in Florida several months ago that could not pass her driving test because of a detached retina, and she got on the water. And about 2 months later, I believe I have that written down somewhere. I believe it was about 2 months. Well, she was able to go back, and apparently that retina reattached, and she was able to get her driver's license. Now then, another thing that we have noticed that this we've had I believe 5 or 6 people that have had broken bones during the time that we've been involved in developing liquid manna, and every time they would go back to get the cast changed, which typically is 3 to 4 weeks, every one of those have been healed, and they've never had to replace the cast. The most recent one was the man whose mother had the fastest growing breast cancer. He's in charge of the telephone company there in northern Arkansas where we live. He had an accident with a chainsaw, and he was cutting some trees, and the thing wedged his hand in and just crushed his right hand. Well, on the way, he finally got loose from it. On his way to the emergency room, he grabbed a couple of the bottles of liquid manna and drank those. And I told him, well, you didn't have to. Your body is already acclimated to it. But anyway, he said, well, I was going to do it anyway. He got to the doctor. Doctor said, we may not be able to salvage this hand at all, and they put they cleaned all the bone fragments out. They put a titanium plate held in by 8 screws, I believe he said, and wouldn't let him go back to work for 10 days. Then they released him for work and said that he could only handle 10 pounds with his good hand, but that was all the physical labor he would be able to do. But anyway, he was to come back in 3 weeks and they told him that if that hand was not healed in 4 months, then there would have to be another operation. They would have to take a bone graft out of his hip and do some work on it. But anyway, they had whenever they put the titanium plate in, I understand that they had some kind of liquid material that kindly replaces bone structure, I suppose. But anyway, when he goes back in 3 weeks, the doctor x-rayed his hand and said that is perfectly healed. They released him to go back to work, no restrictions. So that's been a real good testimony. We've had people with macular degeneration that has reversed it. We had one lady that had a couple of miscarriages. She couldn't carry to term, and we suggested that she drink our water when she was in her 3rd trimester, and she delivered a bouncing baby boy. So we're finding out on almost a daily basis new things that this liquid manna is doing for people, and it not only works for people, it works for animals. And I'm looking at a testimony that came in just today. This lady asked, could a child drink this water? And I wrote back and I said, certainly. Everywhere you use water, this water is a candidate. I said the child needs this water terrifically.
Would that be in a diluted form for the child, Fred?
Yes, you can use it in a diluted form just like you would for anything else.
Okay.
Yes, that's good for children. It's good for mothers carrying that are pregnant. It's good to feed the fetus. I mean, it's just a marvelous product because the body. I've come to understand through nutritionists and others that there's basically 2 reasons why the body gets sick. Now, this is from a medical standpoint, and that one is poisons, and number 2 is nutrition. It seems as though if you can balance those 2, then you can expect to lead a pretty decent life.
Fred, we're coming to the end of the interviews. Is there anything you would like to say in conclusion about liquid manna before we sum up?
Well, it's a pleasure to share this with you and with your listeners, and we're just terrifically excited about it. We don't get any bad reports. It works on everybody that participates in it. We're just so glad that we were permitted to receive the understanding to bring it forth, and now we're just sharing it with those people that want to be a part of it, and we just thank everybody for their involvement with it, and we welcome you to try it. We just love for you to, because I think it will be a real blessing. You will not be disappointed.
And that's whether you have healing challenges in your body or whether you just want to maintain your good level of health.
That is correct. That's well stated. Thank you.
And there are 2 types of liquid manna. Just briefly give us a sentence on why you would need one or the other.
Well, just for, you can really use both of them if you have good health, looking to maintain just a good health. The liquid manna is great. You should bathe in the royal, like we talked about before. Yes. Let it float in the bathtub, just to get rid of the poisons. Give your body a chance to fight those poisons off, and this will just help your body to do that.
Okay. Fred, many thanks for sharing your time. You've been very generous today. Congratulations on Being inspired to come up with liquid manna and to help so many people with a range of afflictions and just the maintenance of good health too. I've been speaking to Fred Neal, who's the developer of liquid manna, and you've